He stepped onto the steaming sand of Leyte with a rifle slung over his shoulder, a rifle that, from the very first moment, made him a target of ridicule. John Jack Stone was not a man who fit easily within the strictly regulated machinery of the United States Army. He stood apart, not by uniform, nor even by demeanor, but by the unfamiliar shape of the firearm that never left his side. Instead of the standard-issue M1 Garand or Springfield, Jack carried a civilian Remington Model 700, purchased years ago through the back pages of a mail-order magazine. Soldiers sneered and veterans scoffed. A so-called catalog rifle, some muttered, wouldn't last a week in the green inferno of the Pacific. Jack's journey to Leyte had begun in far colder, quieter surroundings, the icy forests of Minnesota. There, as a child of Scandinavian immigrants, he learned to hunt, not for sport, but for survival. Food was scarce, and the winters were long. The precision of a single bullet could mean the difference between a full stomach and hunger. Young Jack became obsessed not just with shooting, but with understanding his rifle. He saved for years to buy that Remington, assembling it piece by piece, customizing the trigger and upgrading the scope until it felt like an extension of his own body. By the time he shipped out for war, his confidence in his marksmanship and his mail-order rifle was unshakable. Yet war is the great equalizer. It strips men of pride as quickly as it exposes their weaknesses. The jungles of Leyte seethed with death, especially from the trees. Japanese snipers, masters at concealment and patience, haunted every advance, their single shots echoing down muddy lanes, keeping entire squads pinned for hours. Soldiers grew superstitious, dreading the flash of a scope in the palm leaves. Dozens fell to these unseen enemies, and each new casualty sent a shudder of fear through the American lines. Jack listened to the stories, saw the terror in the eyes of his comrades. When officers demanded volunteers to hunt down the invisible killers, few stepped forward. Yet Jack, with his much-maligned rifle, was among them. His superiors scoffed, one even warning, "You'll wish you had a real weapon when it comes time to save your skin." But Jack, remembering the icy winds and dark woods of his youth, simply nodded. The first day was agony. Jack moved in silence, crawling on elbows and knees through rotting jungle undergrowth. He ignored the laughter that still lingered behind him at camp. Every leaf was a possible threat, every bird call a possible trick. Then, as the sun melted into dusk, he saw it, the faintest glimmer, a lens catching a stray beam of light, just as a deer's hide flashes in the winter woods. He exhaled slowly, every muscle trained to resist the panic that kills. His finger tightened on the trigger. The Remington's report was sharp, clear. A body fell from the tree, crashing through branches to rest in sudden silence. Word spread fast. That night at mess, skeptical whispers turned slightly to nods of recognition. But the challenge was not over. Japanese snipers often hunted in pairs or trios, moving after each shot to avoid detection. The next morning, 2 more shots rang out, both from the enemy this time. Another American throat was opened, fear rippling again through the camp. Jack, with only his Remington and wits, went back out. By sunset, the body count had grown. 3 Japanese snipers had fallen to Jack's uncanny aim. The jungle's tension began to shift. Over the next 4 days, the transformation became legend. Jack kept his head down, moving with a patience that even the enemy later described as inhuman. He relied on instinct more than doctrine, using shadows and scents, the distant crack of a snapped twig, to anticipate where snipers might hide. Sometimes he fired at nothing more than a hint, but each shot found its mark. He mapped silent death across the battlefield, and by the end of the 4th day, the tally was 11 Japanese snipers, each expertly hidden, each undone by a rifle no one respected. The ridicule faded, replaced by a different kind of awe. Officers called him in, wanting to see the legendary rifle. Mechanics and gunsmiths weighed the Remington, inspecting the modifications Jack had made. A smoothed trigger pull, a special hand-lapped barrel, and a telescopic sight zeroed far beyond standard infantry ranges. Ballistics experts jotted notes, while grizzled sergeants began to ask if they, too, could order such rifles for their own squads. It was more than just a question of metal and machinery. Jack's success forced a re-evaluation of discipline and ingenuity, of what mattered most in the chaos of war. The Army, slow to adapt but never blind to results, reconsidered its procurement protocols. A handful of talented marksmen were allowed to use civilian rifles, making their own adjustments so long as results followed. The battle for Leyte turned little by little as the Japanese sniper threat diminished. Soldiers ventured out more confidently. Medics walked upright again, no longer crawling through the mud in fear. Jack refused all interviews and declined medals. He insisted the real story wasn't about him, but about trust, in a tool, in training, in thinking differently when others mocked. Weeks later, mail-order catalogs saw an unexpected spike from the Pacific. Soldiers wrote home, requesting barrels, scopes, even entire rifles to supplement what Uncle Sam provided. Innovation became contagious, and the brass, with some reluctance, nodded approval for select units to equip themselves as they saw fit. After the war, Jack's mail-order legend lived on. The Remington Model 700 became one of the most respected sniper rifles in military history, adopted and adapted by armies worldwide, not just for its technical merits, but for the philosophy it represented: trust in the individual, faith in skill, and the courage to embrace what others dismissed. The jungle's silence, once marked by fear, now carried the story of the outsider who changed everything, not with a government-issued weapon, but with a piece of mail, a dream of precision, and the stubbornness to see it through. Jack returned home quietly, carrying no medals but more respect than any decoration could show. His town welcomed him as the man who had made a mail-order weapon into a legend. Gunsmiths and hunters across America sought his advice, and every new Model 700 shipped inspired a generation to believe that greatness often arrives unannounced in the form of quiet determination and relentless practice. The transformation wasn't only in steel and wood. It was in the minds of a generation that learned to doubt itself, to listen to unconventional wisdom, and to trust in the extraordinary power of the ordinary. Jack's story, like the echo of each shot fired in those hot Leyte days, reverberated through time, reminding all who heard it that legends are forged not by the acceptance of the crowd, but by the courage to stand alone and change the course of history, one precise shot at a time.